Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Lawrence. I'm
Shalom.
here today, October 21st, 2024. We're here to interview you about your life, about your history, your relationship with the Rebbe, with Chabad, family, and my understanding is you're from England originally, and today you live in Toronto.
That's correct.
So please speak as loud as you can. Okay, and why don't you begin with some early family history of yourself and your family?
Okay. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
I was born in England, a place called Leeds. Many people have heard of Manchester, but not Leeds. But Leeds had a good soccer team until I left.
Okay.
I went to high school in Leeds. There were no yeshivos at that time in Leeds. I went to high school.
Yes.
And then, when I was approximately 18 years of age, they started a yeshiva, a small yeshiva in Leeds. And I went to that yeshiva for about 2 years.
When you say they, who is the they?
There was a Rabbi Gold, Rabbi Safa, two rabbis in Leeds. They started a yeshiva.
Of the Litvish?
They were Litvisher.
Okay.
Rabbi Gold was a shtetl makubal. He was well known.
Okay.
Rabbi Safa was a big Talmud Chacham. And we stayed in touch, of course, for many years after that. So for 2 years I went there. And then we only had approximately 5 bochrim in the yeshiva. So the future there was not promising to stay in the yeshiva. And therefore I decided to go to Gateshead. Now, how did I get to Gateshead? So during the summer, I went there sort of as a vacation, and I learned with one of the bochrim. So he saw that I knew something I could learn. And in those days, it was very difficult to get into Gateshead because they really had no room. But coming from Leeds, Leeds was a very irreligious city. Just to give you an example, people used to stop me on the bus and say, "Excuse me, you have your yarmulke on." And I would say, "I know," and they would think I was crazy. So getting into Gateshead from Leeds was easier because there really wasn't a lot in Leeds from a religious perspective. So I applied to Gateshead. I got into Gateshead.
Right. How far is Gateshead from Leeds?
It's about 88 miles, approximately 88 miles.
Okay.
And by the way, Leeds to London is 188 miles.
Okay.
And to Manchester is 40 miles.
Okay.
I know where it is. So I started in a shir in Gateshead. They had 6 different classes, levels. Because I had already been in yeshiva for 2 years, I started basically in the 3rd level. And then from there I went on to the next one, etc., etc. They learned a lot of Musa. It was a Musa yeshiva. Nice people. I mean, they did dedicate themselves to learning, but it was not a Hasidic environment. So I had no contact with Lubavitch. Anything of Lubavitch there was basically very negative.
Well, did you even know about Lubavitch at the time?
No, I didn't know about Lubavitch, but later on, when I look back, I see how negative it was. I never even saw a Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch there, no Sforim. But as I said, they were dedicated to learning.
Right. Now, 1 second. Your parents and grandparents came from what type of? They were Hasidim, Litvisher. What were they?
No, they were from Litvisher background. They came from Dvinsk. I think I never saw from my mother's parents. I really never saw them. They passed away, unfortunately. But I think my grandfather was a shochet, I think in Dvinsk. And from my father's side, they came to England in the late 1800s. Fortunately, my grandfather passed away when I was quite young, so I really didn't know them very well.
And your parents themselves were traditional Jews?
Not really.
Okay.
But the thing is that I always had a feeling towards Yiddishkeit. I was very careful always to wear tzitzis, for example. And later on, I insisted that I get tefillin. It was just there. The feeling was there.
Okay, continue, please. Now going back to Gateshead.
No. So in Gateshead, there was a couple of maybe a couple of stories that illustrate the way they looked at things, looked at Torah, for example. There was a bacher there. I won't mention his name. I don't know where he is now. He was one of the best bacherim in the yeshiva, and he had a certain shockel he learned. He was a big masmid. I remember once he was learning a Tosfos, and there's a word he didn't understand. He took a pencil, crossed it out, and said, "Tor Sofer, it's a mistake." Another story that I remember, again, a good bacher who could learn well, and he was giving a pilpul, and he said, "Rashi sagt zoi, Tosfos sagt zoi, but ich sage zoi." Right.
You actually heard him say those words?
I was there when he was giving the pilpul.
Uh-huh. Well, ich sage zoi. And I say like this.
Ich sage zoi. Now, one problem in Gateshead, because of course they did learn Chassidus, and this applies to many places that don't learn Chassidus, was pride, feeling of self.
Gaiva.
And because of that, there was a division between the lower Bacherim and the higher Bacherim. Those in the first 3-4 shiurim and those in the
Lower
later
shiur.
ones. What they had is they did have Bacherim in the fourth shiur that helped other Bacherim. I was one of those Bacherim, and they considered me a good Bacher because I would answer any question for anybody. But you really couldn't approach an older Bacher. It was very difficult to do that. And to such an extent that the Mashgiach actually told off the older Bacherim in the top 2 shiurim not to be so egotistical and to have more of a relationship with the younger Bacherim. So that came over very strong.
Mm-hmm. Who was the Rosh Hashiva at the time?
It was Rabbi Lapien, Rabbi Lev Gurovich, Moshe Schwabel, Shalom. He was the Mashgiach. And they had various ways of davening, not necessarily Hasidic ways of davening.
You mean they were like shaking a lot and making gestures, facial gestures, hand gestures?
Yeah, the regular shtick. But it was a lot of shtick, but I didn't understand in those days the problems.
Right.
Also, what I saw as well, without mentioning names, I saw that during davening that the Rabban would be learning.
The Rabbeim
would be learning. It didn't hit me at that time, but afterwards I saw that it was not.
Right, you mean during Shemona Esrei?
During Shemona Esrei. Repetition of
Shemona Esrei,
right. But again, I was ignorant of any other derech, so I just observed.
And you were you adapted to it.
I adapted to it. No, I had a good shuttle. By the way, I had very strong stomach muscles. Because, and when it came to Lubavitch later years, the first thing I was told to do is stop shuttling.
Cut it out.
Because otherwise they would throw towels at me. Now, what actually changed there was that there was a yeshiva in London called Snieders Yeshiva. The Frierdiker Rebbe held Rabbi Schneid in very high esteem. He saved a lot of Bacherim from Morocco, Sephardi Bacherim.
Yes.
He had passed away, and there was a lot of machloikas in the yeshiva there, Schneiders.
Divisions.
And his Rabbi Schneider's son, who was a very eloch yid, but he had been sick for a long time, so they didn't consider him as being Rosh Hashiva. So Rabbi Eli Lapien, of the Lapians, he kind of took over, but a lot of Bacherim left.
What year are you talking about?
This is approximately early 1960s.
So when did you begin at the Gateshead? At Gateshead?
At Gateshead, I probably began probably 58 or 59.
58 or 59, and at Snieders Yeshiva in the early 60s.
In the early 60s.
So you were in Gateshead for like 2 years or so?
Well, I was in Gateshead for approximately, let's say, 3 or 4 years. I went to Eretz Yisrael for 6 months, came back.
Where'd you go to Eretz Yisrael? You didn't tell us.
I was in Bnei Brak, in Chicken Visionitz.
Hillel, you said it was named Hillel?
The Rosh Hashiva, the Mashgiach was called Hillel Vitkin. He wrote a famous Musa Sefer. And I always remember that he had false teeth. And, the way of the... where he came, the yeshiva, a Novadik yeshiva, they used to mevatel themselves.
Right.
Gates said it was a Novadik yeshiva. The mashpia there, I forget his name now. He was a very, very elegant person. it was Nevada. So this yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael was a Nevada yeshiva. Bill Vitkin, he used to come and remember, take off his hat and stick it through the railings. And then he had false teeth and he used to keep coming out and he used to put them back again.
So you're saying this was done especially to like
this was their derech. This was their derech to
mevatel
like humiliate
themselves.
So that this would create humility, which later on we realized that this isn't true humility.
Right.
And I remember one Motzei Shabbos in those days in Eretz Yisrael, there was no electricity in the yeshiva on Shabbos, so it got dark eventually. So Shabbos afternoon, this little Vitkin would give a Moshe Shmuz. As it got dark, all the Bochrim would leave. Can you imagine Bochrim leaving when the Rebbe's talking? All the Bochrim left, and then straight after Shabbos, when they could put the lights on, everybody came back.
So you left Gateshead, you went to the yeshiva, and why'd you only stay 6 months?
Because originally I only went there to meet my Chava's parents who were living in Eretz Yisrael. They were leaving Eretz Yisrael. And so my Chava, who I learned with, said, listen, why don't you come with me, meet my parents, we'll stay a little bit, and then we'll come back. Because my intention was to come back to Gateshead.
But 6 months is not just a little time.
Right. So we learned. We didn't waste our time. We learned in the yeshiva. And they gave us a letter. The Rosh Yeshiva gave us a letter saying that we were good Bachrim, and we came back. I think that good letter was the downfall of Gateshead, by the way. What happened was...
What do you mean?
So let me explain. So in the yeshiva, in Snieders yeshiva, this Lezer Lapian came to Gateshead to get some good Bachrim. We had this letter from Eretz Yisrael saying we were good Bachrim. So the first thing said, we'll send these Bachrim down to Snieders to help. 6 months. That's all that. We stayed a year and a half. As I was there, again, I saw the derech and I wasn't happy with the derech. It was a lot of... it wasn't the kind of thing that drew out any warmth, etc. I remember, by the way, the first Sunday I was there in Snieders Yeshiva, so the Rosh Yeshiva gave a pilpul. I was tired, so I wasn't listening. I was very tired. After the pilpul, he called me into his office and he says, repeat it. I said I wasn't listening. He never asked me anymore. That's it.
So let me understand. Yeah. So in other words, even though in Gateshead you felt comfortable, you didn't have any ill feelings about your experience in Gateshead at that time.
Yes.
At that time.
Right.
But when you went to Snieders, you felt uncomfortable.
Yes,
because there was infighting. Is that what I'm hearing amongst the staff?
Some infighting, and there was some things that happened with Bachrim, etc., which I'm not going to go into now, and I wasn't happy with it.
Right.
And they knew that.
Okay.
They knew that.
Okay, and?
Now, I did know some Lubavitch Bachrim in London, where Snieders Yeshiva was, and I remember one Motzei Shabbos, I was invited to a Malava Malka. Can you think of anything worse than a Malava Malka in Motzei Shabbos? Wasn't the movies. So we went, I think three or four of us went to Malava Malka. It was like a bomb dropped. The Rosh Yeshiva called us over. No learning of Tanya in the yeshiva after that. I wasn't in Tanya then. No learning, but one bacha was. No learning of learning of Tanya, etc. And then that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to New York. I'm going to Lubavitch. Nobody spoke to me about going to Lubavitch. It's just something that was inside of me. They had a feeling. I did write to the Rebbe if I should go. I didn't get an answer, but I had a feeling to go.
But 1 second.
Yes.
How did you have that feeling if you didn't have... Did you have any contact with Lubavitchers? What did you know about Chabad Lubavitch at the time? It was just some feeling that overcame you?
It was some feeling, yeah.
Wow.
I was automatically... I felt connected. Some.
From that one Malava Malka?
After the Malava Malka, I knew a few Lubavitchers, but again, nobody spoke to me about Lubavitch.
Right.
Nobody convinced me. I just knew I had to go.
Right.
I had to go. And Then the fireworks began.
One more thing.
Yeah.
In other words, at this Mulav Malka, did you see any Lubavitch Chos? I don't know if Nancy Shemta was still there or others. Did anyone, like, you were very impressed with them? You said, "Oh, this is a real Eved Hashem." Or
Five-ish Vogel.
Five-ish Vogel.
There was also somebody else who actually became part of my mishpacha.
Potash?
No. He is, I forget his name now. Anyway.
Okay.
But I was impressed. But again, nobody sat down and spoke about going to Lubavitch.
Okay.
The Rosh Yeshiva took me to his house. Rabbi Lapin took me to his house. He spoke to me for an hour about the evils of going to Lubavitch. And how when you learn Kabbalah, you make a mistake, it's a big problem. I mean, they didn't have a clue what Chassidus was. They said it was Kabbalah. No. So I told him straight off, I said, I don't like the derech that I see here. Give me a different derech. And he kept quiet. The end was, I did go to Lubavitch. I went into 770 to learn. And just backtrack, I have a brother, twin brother. He was in England, and he wasn't really going anywhere. I wanted him to come to Lubavitch as well. He wasn't Lubavitch at the time. Ashkacha Pratis. My parents really couldn't afford to send him to Lubavitch. It was expensive. And I met a bacher in Lubavitch whose grandfather was very, he was well off, he had money, and he bought a ticket. Chaim Farrow, by the way, was his name. His grandfather bought a ticket to come to New York, got sick, and he said to me, if you want, I'll give you the ticket for your brother. So my brother came over, and he also came into 770, came into Lubavitch.
Mm-hmm.